Integrated Catchment Management Committee meeting on the 16th of April today. We have 2 members online, Hyde and Pippa. Thanks for today. Move on to you, Greg, for the Karakia. Thank you.
Kia ora, Robbie. Morena, everyone. I'll start with the Karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru. Whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kinakina ki uta. Kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi aki ana te atakura. He tio, he huka, he hauhu. Tihei, Māori ora.
Thank you, Greg. Jordan for the health and safety.
Morning, everyone. Just a quick health and safety. In the event of emergency, we'll make our way through the door down the main hall.
No, carry on.
Okay. Cross the main road into the park over here. We'll wait further instructions. If any emergency happens, dress alarm goes off or anything like that, please follow the directions of staff. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jordan. There is no apologies because we've got a full quorum. Early departure from Clyde and maybe early departure from Michael as well. And Ben. Okay, thank you. Can I move in a second for that, please? Warren, Pamela, thank you. Confirm the agenda. So we've had to reorder the agenda for today, moving the Coromandel papers to first because I've got a meeting with Chris this morning. So we're going to move in a second for the agenda. Thank you. Bruce and Pamela, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Right, disclose of interest. The last paper on the grazing lease, 7.8, I think it is. Right. Yes, my family has a grazing lease, so I will stand down as chair at that paper, and Noel will be chair for while that you're discussing that paper, and I will go and sit with staff over there and not participate in the discussion. So. Well, if there's a feeling I should leave the room, I don't mind. It's up to, if that's, well, are you happy with me sitting over there? Would you rather me leave there? That's fine. Okay, thank you. Is there any other disclosure of interest? No. Carry on. Minutes of the confirmation of the we are first and second for that, please. Oh, and Pamela, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. We might have to first and second this, Noel. Yeah. Yep, no. Mike.
Just perhaps some clarity on the item in relation to the 3 members from each subcommittee. As many of you know, there's some landowners in the north or lower Waikato who are concerned about seeking and gaining more permitted activities in the review of the regional plan. And after many meetings and many discussions and thoughts by various people, it was recommended that 3 members of each subgroup form a stakeholder group that would be treated as a stakeholder and consulted and met with by staff in the review process. And it's primarily focused on the gaining permitted activities, but there may be other issues. And it was outside of the scope of the subcommittees in terms of reference. And so that will then take those type of issues out of the subcommittees and through to a stakeholder group. So just wanted to make clarity, and I understand they're having their first informal get together tomorrow, that group. So before they meet with staff. If any, I'm happy to answer any questions on it. Thank you.
Any questions?
Just through you, Mr. Chair, just noting that we don't have a copy of these minutes or reference to them in our packs.
They're emailed to you.
Were they? As a separate item, okay.
From the staff. Yeah. They inadvertently left them out.
Yeah.
I guess my only query, and I'm looking at you two actually as manager, director and chair, is that I know what those guys want. A lot of what they want isn't legally possible, that this just doesn't turn into a whole bunch of time wasting on staff's part and hounding for things that staff can't deliver, if you know what I mean, because we've seen this happen before over the decades with these guys here. I just want to I guess I want some assurance that there's some sort of process in place, because you're not going to have any terms of reference or code of conduct or anything, given it's outside of the subcommittee, that can be managed. Yeah. And so, for example, it might be, Greg, you come to us and say, look, sorry guys, this is becoming too time consuming, we're not getting anywhere, or just worst case scenario, I know, but given the history, I think we need something like that.
If I could respond.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but the Bruce came to both meetings, and he is willing to have the discussions with them and make them understand what can be done. And Bruce, yeah, so it wasn't that they were going to get an open slather at it. They had to work with him, and the meetings would be with Bruce to understand what is a permitted activity and what rules would need to be changed for that to happen. So it wasn't an open slather at all. They were just going to be working as a stakeholder group to understand what the boundaries were and what was able to be accomplished.
Yeah, and the Lower Waikato guys have been in here 2 or 3 times, or once at Hauraki with Tracy and Bruce, and I was present. And I'm not sure, were you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they've been in the building here. So they've already got an existing relationship about the issues with Bruce and the team. So it will fall under Bruce and Tracy, not Greg, because it's a policy area. And so I'm sure if Tracy feels that there's any issues, she will stamp on it pretty quickly.
Yeah, and for the assurance of the committee, I think it's a positive step forward to direct this interest where it is now. Yep, it's in that process.
Just, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, just, I understand what they're asking for, and it's great that they've got existing relationships and are having those conversations. Just wondering, as a council, how we would manage a situation if another group of stakeholders asked to engage to this level. Would we?
Yeah, so I think the point was made was that there are a number of different stakeholder groups that have an interest in the development of our plans, and it's quite appropriate that they get engaged in that development process. We accommodate that, and absolutely, if there's someone that had that level of interest, they would be accommodated in a similar way.
Okay. Yeah. Just wanted to make sure that we were cognizant of any resourcing that might come out of that, calls for resourcing that might come out of that, should there be additional groups.
I think it wasn't that they were going to get any special treatment. It's just if there was a discussion on that area, then they would be involved in the discussion as a stakeholder, not to have special meetings all the time for that group.
Yeah. And I understand what they're asking for. What I'm signaling is all well and good. We're going to accommodate this. We as of what other groups might then ask for this level of engagement. And I'm sure that our policies will be much more well-developed with the depth and breadth of input, but I just want us to be cognizant of any resourcing requirements that would come from that level of engagement.
But there's various rounds of engagement that the staff upstairs are planning with different groups, like we did beginning of last year. We went to the vegetable growers and the dairy industry and the beef industry and a whole lot of other sectors that have got thoughts on this. And my understanding of, they will be slotted into that process along with, and if it's landowners or dairy industry, they would be invited to that same sort of
Forum.
forum as opposed to special one-on-one
Yeah.
meetings all the time.
Yes.
It's just another stakeholder group, and it
Yeah.
takes the focus from this area of the business to where it should be.
Yeah.
That's what we hope it will happen.
Thank you, Noel, for the extra input into that. So, all in favour? Is it against? Carried. Thank you. So if you move to page 70 with the agenda changing round.
Yeah, and if I could just acknowledge, so we have several staff in the room today, several staff online as well. So we've got Emily, Julie and Chloe who've joined us from the Whitianga office, who do pass on their apologies. I'm sure they were wanting to be here in person, but it hasn't worked out. So they'll be taking through a couple of papers that are particular to the Coromandel. Kia ora, team.
Good morning.
Morning, Chloe.
Morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Ina mana, ina reo, rau rangatira ma, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning. Apologies again, and thank you for the acknowledgement that we couldn't be there today. That was certainly the intent, and for once it's not because we're flooding that we haven't travelled. So I'm going to be joined this morning by our fabulous Coromandel Zone Manager, Chloe Wilson. So I'll hand over to Chloe shortly. A couple of things I wanted to note, I guess, before we get into this, is that we will take this paper and the one on comprehensive consents as read. And Chloe will talk through the CIP journey shortly. Before we do that, I'd really like to acknowledge the incredible support we've received from this committee and its members as we've sought to deliver this work and sought to remediate some of the cyclone damage caused by Cyclone Gabby and her friends that visit us in the 22-23 season. You've supported both in terms of the delivery of the work, but also checked in on our people and our staff wellbeing as we've carried out this mahi. So I'm going to hand it over to Chloe, who will take you on a journey of cyclone recovery. Thank you. Thanks, Emily. Jordan, if you could just flip to the next slide. So kia ora whanau, Chair and Councillors and fellow colleagues. As Emily has stated, and we are unable to be in person with you today, but with the visit by our CE, along with the absolutely stunning weather that's currently on our doorstep, which is quite funny given what we're here to discuss today, we thought it better to stay put. So the next few slides are just a snapshot of the amazing work that the cracking Coromandel Catchments team, along with the support of our phenomenal project manager Natalie Young and superb special project star Julie Beaufort, have completed in approximately 18 months with our successful application to local government. Now, the two of us here, Emily and I, are 1000% biased, which is probably no surprise to a few of you in the room. So just to recap, we made an application in August of 23 after the very wet 2022 and a chaotic beginning of 2023. And the unprecedented level of precipitation that continually fell from the sky. The application was pulled together within a matter of days. So teamwork makes the dream work was the motto. And we were successful in the Grahams Creek Flood Scheme Enhancement Project and a Pard Downriver Resilience Project. We then had a second crack and we were successful in the Storm Damaged Tree Removal Project. If you just go back one, sorry, Jordan. In total, across the three projects, we had a total budget of 2.678 million, which was made up of 1.68 million from CIP and 977,900 from WRC funding. With the work beginning in late 2023 with the confirmation of contracts and through to closeout in March and August of this year. So the map to your left there shows the multitude of sites that have been worked on throughout the last 18 months. Now the green dots represent the capacity works and yellow dots are erosion protection within the river resilience projects. The white dots are the storm damaged tree removal sites and red dots are the sites of willow planting which are included in the storm damaged tree removal project. So you will notice that the majority of these sites are on the eastern side of the peninsula which is where the majority of the weather events hit repeatedly over the months from mid-2022 through to mid-2023. Next slide, please, Jordan. Our first project is the Graham Creeks Flood Scheme Enhancement, which we can say is now complete. On the left at the top of your screen, you will see in yellow is the flood scheme itself, located at the northern end of Taurua. It provides an annual protection and up to 100 ARI for this community. So this flood scheme is relatively young, only being completed in 2016. Now on the right there is the design concept, which was to move the weir 50 metres downstream. This aims to minimise the weed screen blockage effects, the weir overtopping and the associated damage and maintenance requirements. Next slide, please, Jordan. Now these are just some of the works completed through the relocation of the weir with what it looks like pre-work at the top left. The top middle picture is the beginning of the works, with the bottom three pictures showing the extension of the existing stop bank, which was in line with the weir extension. So the concrete track across the weir for the landowner in the top right, including some of the rock work for when the weir is activated. Hydro seeding completed at the end of the work in the bottom left, which you'll see has set in the next slide. Not in these pictures are also the new access track running along the true left stop bank to access the weir, and floodgate for staff and contractors, as well as a concrete track for the landowner, as well as 1,100 plants that have been planted. Next slide, please, Jordan. So on the 19th of March, as we were completing the enhancement work, we had a bout of weather with approximately 50 to 90 mils of rain accumulated, which was localised north of Taurua. With the works only freshly completed, we had some minor damage that we were able to quickly rectify. A picture on the left shows the additional rock work added to the weir above the concrete access track to allow the flow of water without the damage. Then a week later, it was tested again with another event. So you'll see in the top right, the weir early Friday, the 4th of April, lapping at the, bottom right, lapping at the top, and then the next check mid-afternoon, it had activated. Next slide, please. So onto the expensive project. So the top left was from one of the original heli flights from over the Coromandel after Cyclone Gabriel, showing the initial issue of these massive trees that line many of our streams and rivers throughout the peninsula, which was as a result of a decision made 30 plus years ago, which has now come at a huge expense to us all. To the right is Trav Boyd, one of our contractors in blue, and James Ferry-Kerr, the Coromandel Catchment unit lead. Both men are over 6 feet tall and look almost like small ants in comparison to these trees. To the left, the result of why so many of these trees were in such a fragile state, with rot being found in the centre and turning the rest of the tree to almost paper. Now this project, although costly work, has been cheaper to deal with as storm damaged rather than as an obstruction in waterways. So depending on the size and the number of trees being dealt to, it's approximately $600 to $1,500 per tree to process, instead of $3,000 to $5,000 per tree if they end up in the waterways as an obstruction, causing sediment buildup, erosion and collection of all and sundry that comes through the waterway during an event. Next slide, please. So this video you may have seen, hopefully it will play nicely. This was taken by our comms team at the Pitanui site. They visited in December of 2024 and followed our river and catchment managers to the different sites of work. So you, Chris McLeay, and our constituent councillor Warren Marr visited the same site a few weeks later. So the Pitanui job was a massive job, and we were able to fell 213 trees along 500 metres of bank. So these trees were all processed on site into chip, and with this number of trees, you can imagine it produced an insane amount of chip. But multiple landowners across this catchment benefited with, which in turn was a benefit to the project, as disposing or even transporting this amount of chip would have been an absolute project killer. Post tree felling, there will be approximately 70 willow poles being planted to replace the willows that have been removed. And if you could press play for this video, please, Jordan. So this drone footage was taken by Mike Theobald, who is one of the Coromandel river managers. Wrong one, sorry. If
Well
you,
done.
yeah. Thank you. So this is of 2 sites within the Whangapaua catchment, which is where Cyclone Gabrielle initially made land here in the Coromandel back in February 2023. So your top row is pre-work and your bottom is post-completion, with Mapariki on your left and a Pitanui on your right, which I discussed earlier. So the footage follows the stream to show the extent of work, but also the number and the size of the trees that were felled, and the daylighting of the waterways as a result. So Mapariki project, so this included 111 trees that were felled along 650 metres of bank. Again, these trees were all chipped on site, and this project was spread across 4 properties and landowners. So both sites are sort of north, for some of you who may not be aware, are north of, in the northern part of the Coromandel, just north of Matarangi.
Did the house get flooded?
Sorry, what's that? Next slide, please. So our last project is river resilience, which is broken into 2 parts. So erosion protection and channel capacity. With our river channels, the project's main purpose is to increase riverbank stability and ensure capacity with the river channels to cope in high rainfall events, reducing flooding impacts and in turn protecting people and property. With working within rivers and streams across the multitude of sites, the team have worked around the Coromandel comprehensive consents, timeframes and conditions. So erosion protection allows the team to increase riverbank stability and is completed in a few ways. So rock revetments, in the left is the damage caused with the bank eroded. The landowner has lost a decent amount of their land to the stream. The middle picture shows the completed rock revetment, which stabilises the bank for future weather events and reduces further land being lost to the stream for the landowner. To the right is tree layering, whereby the team use the trees from the site that have fallen or have been felled, that are then wired into the bank, creating a natural bank stabilisation. Next slide, please, Jordan. Which is my last one. On the left is one of the original rock revetment sites in Hikawai, reinstating the stream bank. And on the right is in-stream capacity works. So at this site, like many, it included vegetation removal and gravel management. So this restores capacity to the river channel, which then gives the river room to move. This can also take pressure off an outside corner, which then reduces the chance of erosion to river and stream banks. So as you will have read in the report, the team have to date worked across 43 sites in this project, removed nearly 2,500 obstructions. So that includes vegetation, sediment and gravel management, and cleared approximately 20 kilometres of stream. So the Coromandel Catchments team over the past 18 months have been able to complete this work at pace and completing not only remediation work from the weather events of 2022 and 2023, but also proactive work in removing what could be remediation work and weather events in the future. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Any questions, Bruce?
Yeah, those are really interesting videos of tree clearing, and I noticed the one of the species was named the poplar. Can you give us a bit of a rundown on what the species were that were being removed and what their planting history was, like who planted them and stuff like that?
So the storm damaged trees.
Hmm.
Yep. So they are predominantly, I believe, willows, that were removed. I couldn't tell you offhand what was being removed from the rivers themselves, but I can find out for you.
I can jump in. I'll add to that. Thanks, Chloe, and thank you, Councillor. Just largely poplar and willow, so they're a mix of species that were planted. So the soil conservation work didn't have a huge presence on the Coromandel, but there was little bits of work carried out randomly, particularly in the Whangapaua and Tairua catchments by the then catchment board. They'd come over, do some poplar planting and then go away, never to be seen again. So we're dealing with largely a legacy issue from the 70s and 80s and 2 or 3 key catchments on the peninsula. These are, 50-year-old poplar now, and it's not an approach. If we're using poplar pole or willow now, we have a maintenance program associated with that, and also look to underplant in native with a longer term plan to remove the willow and poplar and allow the native to establish.
Yeah, no, that's good. You just told me what I wanted to really know, because it's about essentially making sure that we learn from previous efforts that have been made to do the planting, making sure we have the right species, making sure we have the right composition, and making sure we have them in a way that can be managed effectively into the future. So thanks for that. That's exactly what I wanted to know.
And back in the day, we used to, they used to plant, I wasn't alive in the 70s, not yet, a Matsudana willow that we don't use anymore. We only use a sterile hybrid, so we don't have the same sort of impact of them coppicing and regrowing through the system.
No.
I think Bruce and Emily have probably just answered my concern. We have got problem with willows and poplars, and we're planting them again. So when you talk about maintenance, is that topping them, and what is the effort there? Because I also have the issue of poplars and willows on my riverbank, because the Waikato Valley Authority back in the early 80s was promoting such plants and encouraging farmers to come and get them and plant them. And of course, our riverbanks have been eroded by the dreaded koi and are now falling into the river. So no doubt the vessel will be visiting in some future years. But Emily, so what's the maintenance that you're talking about?
Well, as a soil conservator at Hartnell, we do still love our willow and poplar, and they're fantastic, particularly in terms of their root structure and ability to grow in a way that a lot of our natives can't. So what we're doing is we're capturing where a lot of these are being planted now. And so we've got data available and a maintenance where the team are going back in and maintaining a long-term relationship with the landowner to either encourage them to trim and use it for stock fodder. Both make a great feed when food source is scarce, or we're going back in and actively harvesting them to use them for layering, or to take, we're trialling actually this season to harvest our own poles, because there's a real supply issue with poles around not just our region but around the country. So we're going to trial harvesting some of our own poles, but it really is about going in either topping and allowing them to sprout, which gives you the opportunity to harvest for poles, or to top and then poison, provided you've planted something else to come through. So that maintenance around that 8 to 10 year period is quite critical.
Okay, thank you.
Warren.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Emily and Chloe. Pictures do say 1,000 words, so it's amazing to actually see the scale, especially from that drone footage as it went over, and also highly commendable the relationships you have built up with those landowners in the area, and I'm sure they will be involved in that maintenance going forward. Also, just like to commend what happens with the chipping on site. I thought that was a really good out of the box example of the way that it can be turned into a bit of a resource, which has, I know, been used by local schools and all sorts, as well as the landowners. So, and certainly saving us a lot of cost in removing that waste material. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Stu.
Thanks. First question, the maintenance of the old ones, the old poplar and willow plantings, we know has got out of hand in different parts of the region. And this isn't perhaps a question for Emily and Clive, but maybe you as well, Greg. It's a broader question because we see evidence of it all around the catchment. It's just the way things have panned out. We've planted things with good intentions and rah-de-rah. Have we thought about, as an organisation, doing a stock take of what's ahead of us and this sort of thing? Because to my mind, it's too easy at budget time for you guys to say, hey, we've got to do this work plan, this work plan. There's all these little patches of these trees all around the region, and there's probably some on your farm that are getting out of control, and we end up with this reactionary approach, spending a whole bunch of, they're really expensive projects when those trees get to that size, and we inevitably get the blame. Personally, I think we probably do a bit too much sometimes for some of these landowners, given you want to farm by a river, you've got to live with the dynamics of a river, but that's a kaupapa for another day. But do you get where I'm coming from? I'm wondering whether we should assign a bit of resource to someone to spend a couple of months doing a bit of a stock take of what's ahead of us. Either that, or we walk away and say, no, we're not going to do anything with it. Otherwise, they're going to keep coming at us, you know. And I guess part of that question also is, are we keeping a stock take of what we're planting, because we know they've got to be maintained, even the new hybrid ones still have to be maintained. Are we saying, hey, we need to be back here in 2028 or whenever it is for this particular project, you know? Because I suspect we're not, eh?
So for that latter question, I'll pass to Emily and Grant, who will have that sort of regional picture of what we do in terms of our current plantings and maintenance programs. It's fair to say we do have a maintenance program in place across the region, but there's also been quite a lot of focus of last few years of actually getting plants in the ground as opposed to the maintenance side. So there is a need to really switch to making sure we're keeping on top of that maintenance. In terms of the issue of I guess the kind of legacies that we're dealing with, for me it speaks to a similar challenge that we've got with our catchment programs, and that you know, our catchment management space is very different to what it was 5, 10, 15 years ago. There's a lot more different types of engagement happening in the community, and there's a need for us to really step back and take a look at what we're doing, what our role is, and how we sort of integrate everything together. And I think I would include river management in that conversation as well, because yeah, it is. I mean, I guess number one, we will need to increasingly take care of the kind of issues that Coromandel has been dealing with recently, but we also don't want to create issues for, you know, our future selves in sort of 20, 30 years time as well. So yeah, I think it's a good consideration, and it's a project that we do have underway to look at our catchment work. But I think it's worthy of considering casting that net a bit wider.
Grant and co jump in. I actually seriously think it's worth thinking about, if we're going to go to the trouble with ratepayers' money to establish these plantings and put these willows and things in, then hey guys, it's your problem to maintain them. It's not, we're not going to come back in 20 years' time and pull out these massive big trees if you guys don't do it, eh? It's going to be your problem, eh? But yeah, curious to what Grant's saying, eh?
Just before Grant jumps in, if I can, in terms of the legacy, we're identifying in our harbour catchment plans where they exist, where these legacy issue trees are, and have gone as far as to cost them, which is why we were able to make the most of the opportunity through the cyclone recovery workers, that we had an understanding of the cost to proactively remove the trees and the location. So we've also, through the tranche 2, we've put up a bid to continue this work, because it is incredibly costly. And I guess one of the key things I've seen change in the last particularly the last 10 years, Stu, is around the maintenance discussions that have been had with the landowners where we are doing planting. So it, 15, 20 years ago, it was rare to see a landowner agreement for river management work being drawn up. Now it's standard practice. And so that is part of the discussion, and what the landowner is signing on to is around their ongoing maintenance. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. It's Grant Blackie here, just to briefly add. So the issues Stu mentioned about historical poplar and willow plantings are quite real and growing, but one of the things we do have underway at the moment, which Greg alluded to, is a review of our catchment and river management programs. It's a project that Kerry Nielsen is project managing, which I'll talk a wee bit about later. And so that will be one aspect to consider within a whole lot of different aspects. But yeah, for sure, it is an issue, and there is no real alternative to the use of willows along rivers for rampant erosion, and there's not many alternatives to wide space planting for poplars on hill country at the moment either. So I'll just briefly leave it there. Thank you.
Sorry, go. You go.
I've got another question, which is separate. So if you want to talk on this one, go.
I just, Chloe, what was the cost of actually harvesting them compared to removing them out of the river? You gave a costing there. was just double,
the-
it was just about double, wasn't it?
So the cost difference that I quoted was basically if those storm damaged trees are to process them as they are, so sort of partially standing, etc., not an obstruction within the river, depending on how big they are and how many are being removed, it costs, I think, about 600 through to about 1,500. So I believe the Apitanui job, they were roughly about sort of 700 per tree, versus if they were to fall and become an obstruction within the waterway themselves, and end up sort of, in line with that top right hand picture there, that you look at a cost of about 3,000 to 5,000 to remove and then process per tree.
So that's a real issue to the cost
Yep.
of managing the catchment. That's huge. So we've got to get with what Stu's saying, we've got to find a happy place in between that doesn't happen, and we can manage it in a more cost effective way. Yeah.
My other question was about chipping, and just FYI, we chip at home too. We get the chipper in to just get enough for calf bedding and stuff, but it's a pretty expensive way to get rid of trees when you're not in an urban environment where you have to leave the deck nice and tidy. The cheapest option is just to drop them and get them away from the river. Then they're not our problem anymore. If I'm being quite blunt, they're not the regional council's problem, they're the farmer's problem. And so I guess I'm just questioning, why are we going to the added expense of chipping them? If that makes sense, because the average cocky who was doing that wouldn't chip a whole bunch of trees to get rid of them. It's a blooming expensive way to get rid of them.
I'll have a crack at that, and then I'll let our financial guru loose. We did consider that, and we looked at the traditional stockpile and burn, but a lot of these areas had already been seriously damaged and underwater for long periods of time with the multiple events. So feed became an issue. And the quantity of trees we were removing and the number of burn piles we were going to have, in addition to the number of piles of debris we'd removed from the river, was not favourable from a landowner perspective. And also, whenever we start burning, the phone starts ringing as to why we are carrying out blatantly burning when it's not the best environmental move. So it's sort of a combination of things. It was part of the proposal that we were looking to chip, and that was received the government funding towards that. Do you want to add, Chloe?
No, I pretty much was about to say the same thing. So yeah,
that all makes sense. Thanks. I guess, and it's just for future assessments, and I'm not questioning your assessment here, but the landowner, if he gets the option to have them chipped and left with a clean deck, he's always going to say, yep, thank you very much. But given how much of this sort of work is going to be ahead of us, I think we need to think about what do we need to do our rivers properly. Landowner's got a few piles. Hey, I've got heaps of them at my place as well. Everyone does, it's just think we should think about that going forward, given the scope of work that's ahead of us. Otherwise, yeah, they'll all say yes. But yeah. Thank you.
Ben.
Yes, Emily. Item 3 here says government funding received has enabled the team to deliver 3 years of work in 18 months, and we've been very successful at getting government funding. I just wanted to congratulate the team and Greg on the ability to get the government funding, because there's an awful lot of policy and admin work to do that, because government's very difficult. It's not the contractors that do that, it's our staff. And I was just going to ask you, we're also up for a 2.8 million for tranche 2, funding round expected April 2025. You'll no doubt tell us when you get that funding, or about it. It's like...
So through you, Mr. Chair, so that's part of a collective bid across the country for river and flood works to be undertaken as part of tranche 2, and so yeah, we'll definitely be singing from the hills once we find out either way on that one. Yeah, we have introduced a couple of river management projects into this tranche of funding because it does acknowledge the fact that whilst there's a focus on much more harder infrastructure such as stop banks and pump stations, there's a tremendous amount of benefit from taking a whole of catchment approach, improving the health of our rivers, and especially in the Coromandel where there's limited options to mitigate flooding and create community resilience.
Any other questions? Thanks, Chloe and Emily, for your report. And
Just make one comment that this is one part of our SIP funding, which is across the region, and there are several members of staff on the meeting today that have participated in the program in the Waikato as well. And you're right, Councillor Dunbar-Smith, it's quite an effort and skill to obtain government funding in the first place. And I'd like to acknowledge the skill of the team in achieving this and all the other government funding that we managed to get in the door.
just going to say something first. I'm sorry, Chloe and Emily, definitely your resilience of your team to accomplish a 3-year work program in 18 months is pretty amazing. So I'll take my hat off to you. And I guess you were lucky that a councillor was down at the local government thing and said, hey, there's another round of funding coming towards you that you didn't know anything about. But luckily that councillor was there. So I take my hat off to your resilience of making that happen. Thank you. Thank you for your report.
Thank you for your trip to Wellington.
Can I move, seconder, please? Warren. So all in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Move on to your next one. What page was that? 76. 75. I got 70. Well, you tell me 76. Great. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll hand back to Emily to take you through an update on our Coromandel comprehensive consent, which has I think Emily did mention the use of our consents in the previous paper. It is a valuable part of what we do. It enables us to provide that important service in the community. But we are undertaking quite a project at the moment to look at how we do that and how we do that into the future. Thanks, Em.
Thanks, Greg. Hopefully just a nice quick one for you to allow you to catch up on time. I will take the report as read. And Jordan, if you can just go to the next slide, please. So just a reminder of where the Coromandel is, in the Coromandel zone specifically. It extends from just north of Tararu, so north of Thames, up around the west coast, back round to just north of Waihi Beach. So it takes in Mataura and Whiritua there. So we extend into TCDC and HDC area. Next slide, please. So we're looking to reduce from 26 consents currently down to 1. So that in itself will be really exciting from a reporting and management perspective. But a couple of things I wanted to touch on is we're well into the engagement phase of this work with some initial feedback from the District Council's Civil Defence, DOC, and a meeting held with Fish and Game. We've had some prelim feedback from iwi as well, and Chloe is working on setting up hui with them late April, early May. Now, I wanted to preempt any questions around the resource management reform. We've been in touch with some experts around this and have attended Te Uru Kahika workshops. So there's a really unclear pathway at the moment. And I guess the timing of renewals is really critical. If we don't submit our application by the end of next year, our consents start to expire, we can't continue to operate under those consents. So we've looked into whether or not extension is an option. It's not. We could apply for a short duration consent, but basically we'd be doing all that prep for just maybe a few years to wait and see what happens. So the advice we've seen is, because there's no provision for extension and there's no current allowance for our type of situation under reform at the moment, is that we continue, because the information we will need for these consents will still be needed regardless of the process as it currently stands. So happy to take any other questions in regards to the process.
Any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. I guess just how much, it's a bit of a how long space of string, but given you've been operating the existing consent for a while, would I be right in assuming it's largely a case of gathering together existing information rather than doing investigative work, for want of a better terminology?
And yeah, so I think I know where you're coming from. So because of the age of these consents, when they were granted, we weren't required to do extensive monitoring as part of the consents like we are with some of our newer consents. So we are having to do a little bit of further investigation just to check, basically to check our thinking. By working with Mike Lake and our EC team and ICM, our environmental compliance team, we've come up with some pretty basic and relatively cheap monitoring to meet the needs of the consents. And so we're hoping that will be enough to move that forward. And then, as you say, it's just a matter of kind of collating what we've been doing. The timing of the renewal means we're also going to have a relook at the regional best practice guides for river management as well.
Yeah, okay, no, thank you.
Yeah, Emily, under the current RMA conditions, how long would this new one-off consent last for?
We're going to seek the longest duration we can. We're going to be applying for about 25 years and potentially even pushing that out to 30. So we're hoping for that 25 to 30 years, Warren. And so that is allowed for under the current regional plan provisions.
Yeah, we'll see what drops out of the government. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
I suppose I've got a question, but it's not really for Emily. This stuff has to happen, so why isn't it permitted? So I suspect hopefully the government deals with that with its reform. That's not a question. Too bad.
Thanks, Noel, for that though. And looking to renew our consents, I reached out to our cousins over the hill at Bay of Plenty because they only operate under PA rules within their regional plan. It means they don't have the flexibility and the nimbleness to respond during an event that we do, and we're quite limited because we were like, oh, could we just continue to function under the conditions we currently have within our regional plan? But basically, our superpower as a zone is some of the conditions that we have in these consents, and that's really been the driver for us making the decision to go forward with renewals.
It's good to know. Thanks, Emily.
Any others? Well, thank you, Emily. Definitely the big issue that I've got is the cost of this consent to the zone, and how that's going to affect work programs in the future. So that's most probably another discussion another day, but it's definitely going to have to be highlighted that this is going to affect your work program, because it's coming to the resources coming out of it is coming out of your zone reserves. So we're going to have to deal with that if we at some stage, or are you going to be left doing less work even though you've got a consent to do the work? So that's an issue. So
we're bringing a report. We're bringing a report on the zone reserves for all of the zones. I think to next ICMC, so that'll paint that picture.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. So we have a mover, and can we have a seconder for the Warren? Oh, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thanks very much for your report, ladies, and good luck with your discussions today. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right, so now we'll get back to page 14 of our agenda. So we'll resume transmission and welcome Patrick Whaley, our Manager Biosecurity and Biodiversity, is going to cover a couple of papers. One is a general update on the program. The other one is a bit of a follow-up on our discussions that we had around the North Island weather events, and particularly an interest in biosecurity response roles and responsibilities. Thanks, Patrick.
Morning, everybody. I think our presentation's out of order, so you might have to flick through a few slides for the Natural Heritage Partnership. Yeah, keep going. We go. Awesome. Thanks very much. Look, I really want to take this report as read. The team have put a
bit of effort into trying to give a bit more of a flavour for the committee on some of the kind of cool stuff that we've been doing this year for the program. I do have a few slides just to pick out a few of them that I wanted to highlight. So, thank you. All right, so on the Natural Heritage Partnership Program, well, we had our meeting and we approved the funding for this financial year last time, so I won't go over that, but I just wanted to flag that our three funds, the small scale, the EIF and the Natural Heritage Fund, are all opening. So the Natural Heritage Fund is open at the moment and that closes on the 5th of May. The small scale will open just after that and be open for a month during May, and then the EIF will be in the 23rd of June to the 21st of July. I'm sure you'll get people asking, the information's in the report, but just reach out if you have any groups kind of asking questions. Thank you. That's that slide. We thought you'd give a bit of an example because we keep talking about our priority biodiversity sites. Of an example of one of these. So the Pigott wetland is along the banks of the Waikato River in the Lower Waikato. Big Karakia forest, very wet. It's a really good example where you've got a landowner, a community group, and Fish and Game kind of all coalescing around a site and wanting to restore it, which is really cool. So we've been working with the landowners. The community group have installed all the traps and serviced the traps. And it's killed lots of pests, which is great. And some of the neighbouring landowners are now starting to want to get involved, which is really fantastic, actually. So really cool little project. We've got lots of these around the region. So I could go on for hours, but I won't. But this is a bit of a window on kind of how these things coalesce. It's not normally just one landowner. It's a whole lot of things happening in one hit. Next slide, please. In the report, talk a little about some of the issues we've had around the Coast Care program, and one of those is it's quite a cool challenge in a way. Is there's lots of threatened species in these coastal ecosystems that are a bit of a mix of exotic grassland, some native vegetation, and slash and whatnot. So, given some of these projects require a little bit of earthworks, we can't knowingly impact any of these threatened species. So we've worked with the Department of Conservation and got a 10-year permit for our staff to be able to handle these critters, and so that we can go into a site beforehand and assess whether the skinks or geckos or whatnot are there. And it's really underpinning now. To do that underpins our future program, so that we do need to do earthworks. We know what we've got in front of us and we can plan accordingly. Thank you. Next slide.
Has it been a great breeding season for skinks and geckos this year? No, right. I've just noticed around our place that there's bloody masses of them that I haven't seen before.
I couldn't comment. I'm not sure if it's been a good one or not. I don't know. Jacob might have a bit more of an idea than me.
Not sure I can answer that specifically, but we've found now surveys of the Coast Care sites, plenty of plague skinks, but we've also found quite a few gravid female native lizards as well, like moko and shore skink, as well as the geckos. So yeah, it possibly could have been. They do prefer wetter seasons, so I suspect not. I suspect that's status quo. We've actually been seeing more in recent weeks because of the recent rains.
Right. Have you got a question, or you want to wait?
I'm happy to wait. It's just regarding one of the wetland areas, but I'm happy to wait until the completion of the report.
Thank you. So Lake Rotungata is a shallow lake surrounded by private land. It's located in the west of Lake Arapuni. The weir's been installed as part of our lake level setting program. And this program, basically aims to keep the lakes full of water because we've got issues with changing climate and weirs that are set too low or the outlets that are set too low. So it aims to set a minimum level of water for these lakes. And this is a great project, but it's taken it takes an awful lot of planning to get to this point. So we've had to navigate NES, fresh water, and a whole lot of fish passage requirements to allow this bit of work. So 2+ years of planning to get this work done, but it's a great bit of work. Thank you. Next. A couple of examples of innovation in the biosecurity program. The first is eDNA. So what we've been working with is Wilder Labs, who's the crew that do most of the eDNA analysis for the country. And they've got a alert system now for different regions. So we've asked them for an alert for a whole lot of different species. So when someone does an eDNA analysis and it pings alligator weed or it pings Mexican water lily, we get that alert. And we can then go into that catchment and either do some more sampling or try and find out where it is. So it's confirmed some of our alligator weed sites, which is great. But actually, more importantly, for this year, we found a big site for Mexican water lily and been able to get in there, find it, and control it. So it means that we don't have to necessarily do all the sampling. Other people are doing it, and we just get the alerts from it. And other regions are doing this as well. So it's a fantastic innovation and saves a whole lot of time and effort for a whole lot of people. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, trying to think about different ways to find some of these pest plants that are incredibly difficult to survey for. So this is Chilean flame creeper. Most of the year you couldn't even see it because it's sitting in amongst very, very large areas of blackberry. So this year we took a whole lot of photographs using drones when they flower, and they've got a bright red flower. You can't really see it in that photograph, but they've got a bright red flower, and we were able to find not only new sites, but delineate where the ones, and then instead of trying to get people to bush crash through an incredibly horrible environment, we're able to target where the plants are and go and control them. So two examples of really cool innovation by the team that are saving time and money and getting better results. Thanks. So our Kāori team continued to build our engagement program and advocacy work across Kāori lands. And with the opening of the Hillary Outdoors Centre on the top of the Coromandel, this provided a really cool opportunity to to provide some innovative facilities so that you can clean lots of shoes at once, and but also to really reach hundreds of school kids. So the instructors for Hillary Outdoors have leapt at the chance to add Kāori advocates to their roles, and man, they're amazing. And so we're now got this incredible facility that hundreds of kids that get through, and not only are they cleaning their shoes, but they're also doing the VR, which you've all done, which they all love, and are becoming advocates in their own right. So really, just a really cool little bit of innovation. Our staff designed that wash station themselves and helped install it. So yeah, really cool actually. And the VR just goes down a treat. We developed it, but it's being used by every dock office, every council, district councils, community groups. So amazing. Cool. And it changes the conversation you have to being really positive rather than being a hindrance to people's activities.
In the Christmas holidays, I went to the Koto Museum up north, and they had heaps of people that going through using those VR headsets, and the lady didn't know who I was, and they were just singing regional councils your guys' praises for those headsets. Yeah,
it's amazing, So people, there's now lots and lots of the sets like it, so it's fantastic. Last couple of slides. and you've probably got questions on both of these, but the first is just around gold clam, that, you know, we continue to work with MPI as we try and land a long-term management plan. It's not easy because we're trying to work within, everyone's working within their current budgets. We've got a little working group that's busy trying to flesh out what it looks like, both within the Waikato but also all across the whole country. And how do we get people to change their behaviour? Really tricky stuff. Saying that, we've been able to, and in the report you'll have seen it, we've been able to really work creatively with water ski and wakeboarders to come up with innovative ways to treat ballast tanks of boats that previously we didn't think we could treat. They've been amazing to work with, really proactive, wanting to do the right thing. Yeah, so look, we'll have to bring back an additional papers, I think, once we start landing this long-term management for gold clam. But it is, we are working with it. BNZ are being really proactive with us. It's just not easy, again, with that kind of, not a lot of new money around. And the last thing, the Taupo Aquapark eradication is progressing really well. So I understand that they're pretty sure they've killed all the different cubicular species in their aquapark, and are now starting to look at how they're going to fill it in. So that's a big step forward, and it's been a really complex project for BNZ to manage. So hats off to them. And my last slide just is around, you know, similar vein really on Kalupa, which is the exotic seaweed. Yeah, working with Biosecurity New Zealand and Kiwi and regional councils to how do we build a long-term management plan, again, without a lot of extra funding. And how do we progress this pathway management plan approach that we want to ensure that people aren't moving it around the marine environment. So that's the clean vessel plan that we're trying to progress. Yeah, so again, like, there's a lot of goodwill from everybody. It's really tricky. And I think I'll leave it there because I'm sure there'd be lots of questions. Thank you.
Hyde. Waiting a while.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Look, Patrick High, Lake Rotopico wetland, which is an enclosure, fenced off area on the way to Te Awamutu of about 9.5 hectares. And that was a predator-proof effort. And I popped in there a little while ago, and I see that, well, the story about it is that introduced bird species ended up taking over the sort of the tree areas and were roosting in there and causing a bit of a problem. So rats were reintroduced back in to try to chase the birds out, and now I see there's rotificum bait stations sort of all through the area there. Is Waikato Regional Council still funding Rotopico?
I don't think so, but no, we're not.
Not? When did we stop?
No, I'd have to come back to the committee, but we haven't put much funding into this.
Because it's still stated as a sponsor on the signage.
Because
what I saw.
Yeah, we supported the development of the reefs and the restoration, but that was a long time.
And I also just wondered, you know, how it's doing. Like the rats have gone back, deliberately been put back in, and now that I believe that they're using Biodiversity to kill the rats they put back in. So no idea how that's going.
I would have to come back to you on that one.
Okay, another thing, Poriora aerial operation, Haungaroa Range. Now, Waikato Regional Council's contributing to that, correct? Back in, I don't know what, about 10 years ago, Regional Council changed the warning label signs to say that, to include a warning that poison carcasses or baits may be present in waterways, which was meant to be put in areas where Waikato Regional Council were undertaking operations. I noticed in the Haungaroa that sign isn't being used.
The Department of Conservation is the lead for that operation.
And so the Department of Conservation is the lead in all operations WRC undertake?
For this
Or
one,
a part of?
for the Pūthiora operation, Department of Conservation was the lead.
Okay. Which operations does WRC undertake without involvement of DOC?
I'd have to get back to you.
Could you? Yeah. Thanks. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Clyde. Bruce.
I could probably help with the previous questions. So there's been a lot of work going on in Rotopiko in relation to roosting birds, mainly starlings and sparrows and stuff. And at one stage, the fence was taken down, but that process is now being reinstated. And the management tool that is being used and has proved to be most effective is actually trimming of the lower branches of the trees where the birds were roosting. And because this is a national issue in all predator exclusion fence projects, the processes that are being applied in Rotopiko have been turning out to be very important, because they are the ones sort of leading the way on what are the methods that can be used effectively to control roosting birds. So my understanding is there's been a significant reduction in the roosting bird numbers just by the manipulation of the vegetation. And the rat thing is a failed previous experiment which occurred some time ago. So yeah, the questions that I have are really around the item 34, the priority possum control, and the letters that have been sent out to private landowners. And I'm just trying to understand, I'm actually hoping that Patrick will get me up to speed, because I'm attending a conservation board meeting on the 30th, which I think should be addressing some of this issue. So I noticed that DOC has stopped their share of the funding in relation to priority possum control, if I'm reading the report correctly.
Yeah, that's right, for the Hauturu. Yeah.
And so that, and then there's the issue of the overlay, of the need for an integrated pest control process, because the area where this funding has ceased, the Hauturu Awaroa Valley, is nationally significant for the karst ecosystems that are present, the limestone ecosystems that are there, and the presence of probably the only endemic native plant to the Waikato, the only native plant that's only found in the Waikato and nowhere else in the world. So this is a very important part of our region, and I'm really concerned to hear that DOC is not coming to the party here. So can you comment on, so is the goat control still ongoing? Is there an integrated pest control process occurring? And because the lack of the possum control would have a direct effect on the threatened endemic plant. The goats, though, the combination of goats and the possums is the problem for the karst ecosystem. Could you comment on the way you see the prognosis for Hauturu Awaroa at the moment?
Yeah, so the it's a shame I don't have a map, but there's a lot of little Department of Conservation reserves and private land ecosystems. It's not a nice round shape or anything, so the boundary is really complex, and so it means, you know, with Department of Conservation pulling funding out, it would make any attempt to do any pest control without them fruitless, really. And so there is no funding going in from DOC for goat control either. Yeah, so which is a frustration for some landowners.
What about goat control? Is there
No, there's no goat control.
So there's no goat control, and now there's no possum control.
Yeah.
That's what I needed to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, this is a major issue for our region, because, you know, these ecosystems are nationally significant, and they're pulling out of that what's happening across the country as well. That's a pretty serious thing to be happening.
Yeah, it's real.
So,
It's a real concern, and we've unfortunately managed. We've managed previously to keep them inside the project, and they've funded it, but they've now, pulled out.
Thanks for that information, Patrick. And
Happy to get you.
I'll try and get some people on the conservation board onto it.
Yeah, I'm happy to get you a map of the area as well.
I'll just add on to that question of Bruce's before that goes any further and other questions, but we have a very similar issue around the Kaipua Peat Dome where getting any form of pest control possum there, and yet the possums are just going crazy because they're coming out onto our farm and eating from our pasture and our crops. So their population is going rampant, and then they're going back in to rape the Kaipua Peat Dome every day as well. So without trying to kill them on our side of the boundary, they're actually doing a double. We're feeding them to populate to then go back and do more damage. So this is a real issue in the region, I think, with possum control. And goats would be the same if you're not going to, because goats and pigs do the same thing when they'll come out onto the productive areas, feed, and then go back and do all their damage back in the natural environment again. So I think it's definitely something that, how do we get all of the groups involved to have one direction of how to do it? So you bring up a very good question there, Bruce. Thank you. Who's next? Warren.
Yeah, thank you. Patrick, really interested to see the hot water treatment of the ballast water and the wake boats and stuff. Has there been any monitoring to prove that it's effective?
I understand there has been.
There has
been. So we've been working with NIWA. They've been supporting us. So I understand that they are able to get the temperature up to that 55 degrees, which kills the clams really quickly, pretty easily, and it doesn't. So far, it hasn't delaminated any boats, which we know, but they've been really supportive, and I think the manufacturers have also supported us with confidence that we're not going to damage any boats at that temperature as well.
That's awesome.
It's really cool.
Yeah, Greg, my next piece is probably directed at you. I had some criticism of PT yesterday, and I just noted in the report there was a ghost care hui up in Kuatuna. A lot of stakeholders involved, iwi, councils, etc., like that, and no councillor notification. So I'm just finding that really frustrating. That and talking to some of the other councillors in their areas, we're not getting that feedback about these events. To attend, but also to celebrate all the good mahi that's going on around the place. It's really frustrating not getting that information coming through on these events. Happy to apologise if I can't make it, but and I'm sure other councillors are in the same boat. So if you could take that on board, please.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Stu.
Well, thanks. You might not know the details, Patrick, but the Halo stuff, there's nothing there for Pokemako and Te Ruahanga. Were they zeros, were they?
You're right. I don't know the detail.
No, I didn't think you would. I'll catch up afterwards.
Ben.
Just four things. Firstly, I noticed there's an interesting job description there for an alligator weed sniffer dog.
Yep.
So you train them specially, do you?
We do, yeah, we do. Yeah, they're much better at spotting, at finding alligator weed than we are. Yeah, they're impressive. Yeah, we've got dogs that sniff quite a few pest plants now. So yeah, it's good.
Second, with your Chilean flame, you're obviously using drones to spot it. Are you using drones to actually play it as well?
Not at this stage. No, they'll go in and cut the stems and.
Okay. Looking at your rook map on item 36, looks like there was a big spike in 2016-17, and we're down to very few with hardly any chicks now. Is the rook problem being solved?
Not resolved. If we take the foot off the management, they'll breed really quickly. But we are finding less and less, which is good. And it's one of these programs that we want to start looking more nationally, because this trend is happening in most regions. So what would it take for us to actually really drive the population down? Because a lot of these are flying over from other regions. So so it's really positive. It's just how do we take it to the next level try and get rid of them.
And finally is,
Poison.
could we get a golden clam report for our next meeting? I note here that there's already a new role employing LTP for a person looking at golden clams, recently approved 114 for CapEx and then 170 for OpEx on top of that. So it'd be nice to see where that's going. And also what is happening with Biosecurity New Zealand, because I notice in the next paper, Waikato Regional Council will not be the lead agency in any national biosecurity response. Seem to be being pushed in that direction by Biosecurity New Zealand. Is that fair?
I wouldn't use the word pushed. It's a perennial issue of what do you do when something new comes into the country that you cannot eradicate, and who's best to manage it, because Biosecurity New Zealand have a small team. They don't have a regional presence, and our role is to manage pests inside the country. So it's how you transition is the key, and then what does that program look like? And I will certainly talk about it in the next paper. Yeah, but it's not pushed. We have a role in biosecurity. It's written into the Biosecurity Act. So it's just how we do that. So that it's tricky. It's really tricky to do it.
So it would be useful to have a paper setting out these things for the next meeting. Is that fair?
First. You have a question, Bruce? Oh, your name's down.
Press the button.
Button.
A response before, just pointing out, the significance of integrated pest control, because Warren and I were at an event in the Coromandel long ago where we learnt that devastating news about the pig impact on native frogs, for example, which, I was definitely not aware of the extent of the problem that was outlined at that meeting in Coromandel, which essentially is that the pigs in our region are pretty well consuming vast numbers, and I mean vast numbers of our native frogs. So this whole idea of integrated pest control, because if we don't do it in an integrated way, the system just keeps going backwards.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to that, Bruce, I've been to a couple of meetings with farmer groups that are all getting funding from MB and all sorts of organisations that are all doing their own little thing. And I've spoken to Pamela about this recently, that we must do a collaborative process of how that happens, not everyone just doing a patch and then they're going to come to us for funding for fixing it. So it's happening all around the region, and how we work better in the future together with that is really important. So yeah, I totally support what you're saying. Yeah, Noel.
Yeah, I don't know whether you want to answer it now or in the next one, but just following on from Ben, the government manages the border, the clams came through the border, and now it's in our patch. We've got to respond to pests, which is pretty much what you just said. But it's the cost of managing that. So is government going to contribute for their inability to prevent the organism coming through? Got to blame somebody for doing it. I'm a bit cynical when I say that, but yeah, the reality is there was a failure at the border, and now the community's been asked to pick up the pieces to do what we're legislated to do. So is there going to be any contribution? So whether that's something for another day or with the next paper?
Oh, no, I'm happy to answer it now. I don't necessarily agree with how you've articulated it. I don't think Biosecurity New Zealand ever say that they've got 100% closure of the border. If we could do that if we wanted, like we could have done it with COVID and we could still be COVID free, but no one would have come and gone from this country for the last 5 years. So the same with any organism that can get in. It's a probability thing. So it's not watertight. And with increasing trade, more people coming in, the risk goes up. So you got to be a bit pragmatic and say there's gonna be incursions. So how as a country do we deal with it? And we've been working, that's part of the reason we had the MOU with DOC and Biosecurity New Zealand to say, okay, how do we do this in a pragmatic, sensible way if something does come in and we can't get rid of it? What's the response of New Zealand to do it? And it's not easy, because we have to then go, okay, well, can it be managed? What is the management that you could do, and can we afford to do it? And do we have to reprioritize what our council does? It's really tricky, and I don't think there's any easy way of doing it. But you have to be open about it, and you have to have a reasonable process on it.
So you mentioned funding, so that was where I was getting to, is that perhaps another day, but the issue of these incursions, and I saw fruit fly in Auckland recently again. We've had it in Hamilton, one insect, I think it was. Is our budgets or our reserves sufficient to support you in what seems to be a growing issue, although slowly? Do our budgets sufficiently prepare you to be able to deal with these situations? Or do you, as you said, reprioritize?
I think the answer depends a little bit. Well, and I think that's why we're working behind the scenes at the moment with Biosecurity New Zealand, notwithstanding that it's a little bit slow, this work, and I've talked to Pamela about this before. It's the intent's good. We're sitting behind the scenes and going, how can we build a program to try and contain particular to the Waikato River so it doesn't rip around the whole country? Because everyone's going to have to do something. So what is that something you have to do? Can we afford it with our baseline, and can BNZ bring some money to the table? I know they can bring a little bit of money to the table, but they've got a lot of constraints as well. And I know we're digressing into the next thing, but bird flu is in my view, a more sensible way of approaching these things, which is here's something that's going to get into this country. When it gets in, I don't know, but it will get here. You can't stop it getting here, so we can't ask the albatross to stop flying into to New Zealand or wherever it gets here, but we can prepare ourselves. So what we're doing at the moment is working with the Ministry of Health, BNZ, regional district councils, and saying, this is going to land. How can we gear up so that we can manage the potential risks? And so we're doing that at the moment. It's a sensible approach. We're saying we're not going to have a biosecurity response except for the poultry industry, but everything else, we're just going to have to try and live with it like they've done in other countries. Yeah. So, yes. Yeah. Thanks.
I was just going to follow up on what Noel was saying. Is the biosecurity response with kiwi fruit actually deemed that the incursion was a altered biosecurity letting it into the country? So there was a legal response there. So just to note that. I wonder, are power generators also part of this group, and are they contributing funding towards it?
That's a work in progress. They are putting funding into trying to sort their own practices out so that they don't get impacted by clams and they don't move them around as well. So they are. Same with the municipal water supply. People are busy trying to work out how they can function with clams in their system. So, but we're kind of in the throes of working out how we can play together well so that we're all contributing to the same program.
It's just, that's why I'm asking for a report on this, because there's been a kind of slow creep. Originally, it was biosecurity's issue, and we were simply looking at making sure our own staff were not contaminating anything.
Yep.
Now it seems to be spreading to, we're going to be taking much more of a regional lead. So we just need to know where it is and what your projection is in terms of costings.
I'm not coming back for any more money.
Yet.
No, I'm not. We can't just, because we can't just keep increasing our bill, it's my opinion. And I don't think it's up to Waikato Regional Council to try and contain these things. for the benefit of the whole country, which is why Biosecurity New Zealand is in the room with us. But we need to see if we can, as a country, build a program within our current means. So at this point, there's no thought of coming back to council for more money.
Okay, well, that's excuse me, rare from a council staffer from this market. So it's interesting to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Pardon? Yeah, it was good report. We're running a little bit late, so we'll just get, can we have a mover and a seconder, and we'll get straight into the next one so we can have a short break before we do the last group. So Bruce and Ben, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Patrick, and lead straight into the next one.
Yeah, we've covered half of it. That's all right. Look, at the council workshop, when you looked at the severe North Island weather events, I think it was on the 13th of November, it started talking about the biosecurity system and roles and responsibilities, and we thought it'd be helpful to bring this paper back. Kind of lay it on the line to how it's supposed to work, noting that a lot of these things are quite bespoke and it's everyone's different. So Biosecurity New Zealand is the lead for most responses. The only place where they're really not the lead, but they are often a big supporter of it, is where there's a human health risk, human health disease like COVID. So Ministry of Health came in and they took the lead, and Biosecurity New Zealand tucked in behind. Regional councils have a role in the Biosecurity Act, a number of roles, and one of them is regional leadership. And so to try and really nail down how all this works, we signed up the MOU. Greg brought the paper earlier this year, last year, I can't remember when it was, probably late 2024. The MOU to try and lay out a better way of working with them. It's progressing really nicely, and it's a better framework. And across the board for responses, we could be asked at any time for support, and we've pledged that support, right? So it is a priority. If you need help, you have to ask. There's subtleties underneath that about what it all pans out, and I've got a few slides which kind of teases it apart a little bit, noting there's more variation than this. So the first example, if you can move to the next one, is fruit fly. So you've raised that already. So we've had quite a few incursions of different fruit flies, Queensland fruit fly, Oriental fruit fly. In this case, so the most recent one, while we offered support, they didn't take us up on the offer. So with this, because there's an industry that's directly impacted, they have a GIA or a government industry agreement with BNZ that they will be involved in support. They'll help fund it. It's in a response, sorry, and they'll help fund it. So they took the lead. Biosecurity New Zealand did not ask us for support. But in the past, we have been asked for support, and so we've sent staff up to go and knock on doors, coordinate operational teams, and they fund us. So that's a direct. So in this case, they would fund us. We wouldn't be utilising our reserve. They would just be funding ours, and we've done that quite a few times. So the next example is what we're kind of saying is a regional response, but it's not really a response. This is how do we deal with a new disease in this region that we can't stop moving through the region. It long ago became too big for BNZ, and they realised they couldn't get it out of the country. But Auckland Council maintained the program, tried to keep Dutch elm disease in Auckland. Recently, it kind of broke the border and is now moving through the Waikato. So we've thought, well, actually, we do biosecurity, so we could take a regional lead here. So we have, and for like minimal effort for us, what we've done is we've pulled all the TAs together and said, this thing's coming to a place near you. We're providing technical advice, comms material, whatnot. We've got a coordination group and we're helping out with a bit of surveillance. But essentially what needs to happen is TA needs to cut trees down and dispose of the material really safely so they don't spread it when they die, and they die really fast. So you get elm, and there's a lot of amenity plantings through the Waikato of elms. Yeah, it's only elms, yeah. But so they're spread by that beetle or arborists often. They'll cut a tree down and they may not clean their gear properly, and they'll go and cut a few more trees down and then spread it. That's a faster way to spread than the beetles. The beetles don't spread it very quickly. Yep, so the TAs have been really, really good to work with, and are gearing up for more costs because these things die fast, they fall over fast, so you need to cut them down, and they're often, and like this photograph is a classic, in a really difficult place to remove a tree, expensive, and then you have to dispose of it in a landfill. Yep, so that's I guess another way that we're playing in a response. And the other example we've got on the next slide is velvet leaf. So we've had velvet leaf in our regional pest management plan since 2012, I think. But in 2015-16, there was a whole lot of contaminated seed brought into the country, talking about a leaky border. And a national response was stood up, but we ran a regional response in parallel because we'd already taken on the responsibility for this pest. So we have our own little industry working group that we stood up. We provide advice and communications and whatnot to landowners. We run a decent surveillance program. Again, we've got a dog that can smell. These things are really smelly, so they're easy for a dog to smell. Surveillance program with a dog and staff. When we did stand up the response, we had our own headquarters. We had pulled our own SIMS team in. Greg dragged Greg in for that, and had the whole council in behind us to try and get a handle on it. And so our numbers of sites jumped up lots when we got all these new incursions from contaminated fodder beet seed. And look, we just ran it in parallel with Biosecurity New Zealand. And now we run a sort of slightly pared down program. It's not a response anymore. It's how do we contain velvet leaf to the properties that it's on. So 3 examples of quite different programs, all involved Biosecurity New Zealand at some point, and then we've worked out a way of managing them into the future. And for some of these, you know, it's actually not the biggest of programs, but you just got to be really organised with how you run it. And with this one, industry's been fantastic to work with. The Waikato, really cool. And I think that's me.
Questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Patrick, yeah, I sit on the Exotic Caliper National Advisory Group, and which has been put together by BNZ. Just noting that Regional Council doesn't have a presence on it, and I don't know whether we were invited to. Auckland City Council does.
Yep. So often with these national programs, rather than having 16 reps on them, we'll have 1 or 2. So Phil Brown and I think Don McKenzie sit on that group, and they represent the whole regional sector. So hopefully Phil's been wearing more than one hat when he's speaking, but yeah, they meet with us before the meetings and after the meetings, and so we do that with almost all of our national programs now. We only have maybe 1 or 2 people because it's just too much of a drain for everyone to be involved. Plus, I think we'd swamp them for things that we're all interested in.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Cool.
Any more? Thank you, Petra, for your paper. It was hopefully the report you bring out later in the year will bring up some of those questions that Ben and Noel brought up. So we look forward to that paper coming in a couple of months' time.
Cool, thank you. And I'll get that information that we talked about.
Yeah, what Clyde was after. Thank you. If you get back to him with that, that'd be great.
Cool, thanks a million.
Mover in Michael and a seconder. Noel, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Can we take a 5-minute recess for? Thank you. Back in 5, so back at. Just make it 5:15.